Hi folks, Tom Vizzini here. I want to talk to you about reaching your potential. You know, I hear it all the time. You know, I want this. I want this. I have to have this. My plans are this. I see my future this way. And everybody out there has a thing in their life or a way that they want their life to be. Okay? And then there's the way their life is. Now, this may still be good, but they still have what they want and what they desire. All right? Now, the problem is what I hear people tell me all the time is, hey, all you've got to do is just motivate yourself correctly, and you can get from here to there. Right. Okay, or maybe, make a goal. That's always been good advice, okay? How many lists do people have out there? Find inspiration. Well, that's like fishing, okay? You sit for a very long time, and hopefully something bites. Get excited, okay? Okay, I'm where I am. I'm excited. Now what? Okay, nothing. Make it public, because public humiliation is a great way to motivate yourself. Not really. It can, but I wouldn't recommend it. It hurts. Avoid negative thoughts. So what are you going to do when that happens? You have a negative thought, and all of a sudden you go, oh, no, I'm not. I'm telling you, that's never going to work. Now, the problem is this. Telling people all of this stuff is like telling somebody who's drowning, the solution to their problem is that they just have to swim more. Okay? Or if they don't even know how to swim, it's like, well, the problem isn't that you're drowning. You're just in too much water. All right? None of this is really helpful advice, but it is obvious and it is true. Okay? And that's where people fall into the trap. They end up in an endless cycle of list making and passion and public and motivation and excitement and inspiration and avoiding negative thoughts. And it's the same stuff in 1,000 books, maybe written a little bit differently. I'm going to give you another alternative, okay? I'm going to give you the answer to why this stuff is great advice, but it's so hard to implement, and it's really, really easy. It's what we call the primal trap, okay? So the primal trap is this. You have your creative adaptive part of your brain, and you have your primal part of your brain. Okay, creativity, adaptability, this is where problem solving, adapting, putting things together, creativity, which is why creative adaptive. All right, all of these things are actually in the exterior part of the brain that has like billions upon billions upon billions of connections. And they're all interconnected. All right? Then you have the reactive part of the brain. The reactive part of the brain does one thing. React. Okay, so primarily run on 4 emotions. Fight. Okay. Survival, food, shelter. Sex, need I say more? All right, and flight, run away. Okay, so running on these 4 basic emotions, you can understand that when you run into a problem, okay, and something happens in your life, having one of those 4 choices is much different than having billions and billions of interconnected things and giving you all good choices. By the way, all 4 of these choices are still valid, but if they're 4 of 100, you may choose something different. So, the problem I've run into is that when you go back to think about all of those things on the last screen, excitement, pleasure, desire, inspiration, passion, the problem with those is that they are still reactive emotions, okay? This is the exact problem. You can't replace one reaction. You can't replace misery with happiness. You can't replace depression with excitement. You can't replace, hate with love. You just can't do that. It doesn't work. The connections in the primal part of the brain are very isolated. They go in and out. They're like a bunch of elevators. They just don't ever connect sideways, all right? Where here you end up with more of a web upon 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 a web effect. And that's where you have your problem-solving ability. Now, getting out of the primal trap requires one simple thing. Reactivating, because what happens here is when people have a primal life, they have take a chance, risk. All right? They have risk. Risk goes primal. Shoots off, run. Okay? If you have a risk-run response, telling someone to find their passion to make the risk not so much or worth it, and so that they won't feel like running, is just not very good advice. So the problem is it's the way that your brain is functioning, and that there has been a complete and total disconnect between those 2 levels of the brain. Each way can cause a problem. if you are someone who, I met a guy a while back, and he is very educated. He reads books. He goes to seminars. He makes stuff up, and he never does anything with it. Okay? The creative part of the brain has no movement. It's basically you sit and daydream your life away. But it feels good because at least you've come up with ideas. All right? The reactive brain is just all movement, okay? It moves without thought, out of the frying pan into the fire, time and time and time again. So the connection is, the thing here is get the brain back in balance, okay? You want to balance the brain. So you have the outside creative adaptive working with the primal in a fashion where they exchange in a balanced way. So that when you run into a problem, before you run away, or when you have risk and you feel uneasy, before you run away, you create a solution. And having both of this work in a balanced way, all right, balanced brain. You want a balanced fashion. You don't want to replace one reaction with another reaction, okay? You don't want to replace one idea with another idea. One idea with another idea, that's all up here. One reaction with the other reaction, that's all down there. Okay? It doesn't really help. And that's what we want to teach you how to do. And I'll get to that in the next tape. So thanks a lot. This is Tom Vizzini. Reach Your Potential, EssentialSkills.com. Come on by and see us.